Hello, friends, and welcome to Jewels of Truth. My name is Daniel Fontenot. Today, we will continue reading from this book by Christian Edwardson entitled Facts of Faith. And we're going to be discussing the subject 666, the Pope's number. Yes, 666, the Pope's number. In the Bible, in the book of Revelation, we have one of the earmarks of the Catholic Church, of the papacy. Revelation 13, verse 18, it says, "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666, the number of his name." And that's Revelation 13, verses 17 and 18. The note below the 18th verse in the Douay, or Catholic Bible, says 666, the numeral letters of his name shall make up this number. In our examination of this subject, we shall first consult Roman Catholic authorities to ascertain what sacred title they apply to the Pope to denote his official position and authority. Anyone at all familiar with authentic Catholic writers knows that their paramount and constant claim, now we have to let this sink into our minds. Let me repeat. Anyone who is familiar with authentic Catholic writers, Catholic authors, knows that their paramount and constant claim for the Pope is that Christ appointed St. Peter to be his what? His vicar. To be his vicar, or representative on earth, and that each succeeding Pope is the lawful successor of St. Peter, and is therefore the vicar of the Son of God on earth. This official title in Latin, the official language of the Catholic Church, is Vicarius Filii Dei. We find this title used officially in Roman Catholic canon law from medieval times down to the present. Now, I'm going to skip a few pages because if I read them, you would be bored to tears. Let me go on to the next page here. We cannot, because the writer of this book gives Catholic authorities their statements to show that the official title of the Pope is Vicarius Filii Dei, which means the vicar of the Son of God. So he continues, we cannot see how any consistent Catholic can deny the authenticity of this title without denying the infallibility of the Pope. What more authority can they desire? Before going further, let us apply the rule laid down in the Catholic Bible for counting the number of his name. It says, quote, "The numeral letters of his name shall make up this number." Note under Revelation 13:18. In Bible times, they did not use figures. We can see this on dials of old clocks, in numbers given above chapters in the Bible, and in dates inscribed on cornerstones, certain numerical values given to some of the letters. In Latin, I stands for 1, V for 5, X for 10, L for 50, C for 100, D for 500, and M for 1,000. Originally, we have no U, but V was used for U, and V is often used for U today on public buildings such as public library, when public is spelled with a U instead of a V. And our W is still written as a double V, not as a W. Of course, I know that even today we don't do that anymore, but in the times in which this was written, they were still doing that. The next Catholic authority we shall quote is F. Luci Ferraris, who wrote a variable encyclopedia in Latin, of which several editions have been printed by the Papal Church at Rome. The American Catholic Encyclopedia says of Ferraris' great work that it, quote, will ever remain a precious mine of information, unquote. From this unquestionable Catholic authority, we shall first quote its Latin statement and then give the English translation. So, I'm not going to try to read the Latin statement, but I will read it in the English translation. Quote, as the blessed Peter was constituted vicar of the Son of God on earth, so it is seen that the pontiffs, his successors, hold from us and our empire the power of a supremacy on the earth greater than the clemency of our earthly imperial serenity, unquote. Henry Edward Cardinal Manning of England, very well-known cardinal, an extensive Roman Catholic writer of high esteem in his church, applies the same title to the Pope, only using it in its English translation. He says of the popes, quote, the temporal power, now, again, and I have to say this because so many of the Catholics who have attacked this channel, have attacked me, they act as if I'm coming up with this stuff on my own. No, I'm reading here from a Catholic source, okay? A cardinal at that, Henry Edward Manning. The temporal power in the hands of St. Gregory I was a fatherly and patriarchal rule over nations not as yet reduced to civil order. In the hands of St. Leo III, it became a power of creating empires. In the hands of St. Gregory VII, it was a scourge to chasten them. In the hands of Alexander III, it was a dynasty ruling supremely in the name of God over the powers of the world, so that I may say there never was a time when the temporal power of the Vicar of the Son of God, though assailed as we see it, was more firmly rooted throughout the whole unity of the Catholic Church. It was a dignified obedience to bow to the Vicar of the Son of God and to remit the arbitration of their griefs to one whom all wills consented to obey. And that's from the temporal power of the Vicar of Jesus Christ, pages 231 to 232, second edition, London, Burns and Lambert, 1862. The same year, this book was translated and published in Italian with the sanction of the Church attached to it. The title Vicar of the Son of God appears on pages 234 and 235 of that edition. Philip Labbe, a distinguished Jesuit writer on historical, geographical, and philosophical questions, in his Catholic Encyclopedia, Volume 8, pages 718 to 719, in his historical work Sacrosancta, I can't read all that in Latin. I'm going to skip that part. He uses Vicarius Filii as the official title of the Pope. Coming down to our own times, we shall call to the witness stand a moderate advocate of the Roman Catholic cause. Our Sunday Visitor of Huntington, Indiana, in its issue of April 18, 1915, gives clear testimony in this case. We quote it in full. Quote, what are the letters supposed to be in the Pope's crown, and what do they signify, if anything? The letters inscribed in the Pope's mitre are these: Vicarius Filii Deus, which is the Latin for Vicar of the Son of God. Catholics hold that the Church, which is a visible society, must have a visible head. Christ, before his ascension into heaven, appointed St. Peter to act as his representative. Upon the death of Peter, the man who succeeded to the office of Peter as Bishop of Rome was recognized as the head of the church. Hence, to the Bishop of Rome as head of the church was given the title Vicar of Christ. Enemies of the papacy denounced this title as a malicious assumption. But the Bible informs us that Christ did not only give his church authority to teach, but also to rule. Laying claim to the authority to rule in Christ's spiritual kingdom in Christ's stead is not a whit more malicious than laying claim to the authority to teach in Christ's name. And this every Christian minister does, and that's from our Sunday Visitor, April 18, 1915, 13th question under Bureau of Information, page 3. So, in this article, this person is saying, hey, he's the visible head, and so he has the authority not only to teach, but also to rule. And this is not malicious. It's not any more malicious than someone who claims authority to teach in Christ's name. So later, when Roman Catholic authorities discovered that Protestants were making use of the foregoing statements, the statement I just read to you from a Catholic authority, to identify the papacy with the anti-Christian power of Revelation 13:18, they attempted to repudiate the contents of their former article. But that article was not written by some contributor to their paper. It appeared in the Bureau of Information, quote unquote, for which the editorial staff was responsible. And on page 2 of that paper appeared sanctions for the editor from Pope Pius X, dated May 17, 1914, from the apostolic delegate John Bonzano, dated April 28, 1913, and from J.H. Erleding, Bishop of Fort Wayne, Indiana, dated March 29, 1912. If statements made under such high authorities are not trustworthy, we would respectfully ask if their present denials are any more so. Because, see, again, this Catholic authority says that his church has the authority not only to teach, but also to rule. To one versed in Catholic teaching and practice, there is nothing uncommon in such denials, where the interest of the church is at stake. Cardinal Baudrillard's quotation on pages 64 and 245 of this book shows that some authors ask permission from the church to ignore or even deny some historical facts which they dare not face. And we read in the History of the Jesuits by Andrew Steinmetz, Volume 1, page 13, that their accredited histories in common use with permission of authority are veiling the subject with painful dexterity, unquote. Okay, so, and now we shall here refer to one other similar denial. In the Roman Catholic paper, The Shepherd of the Valley, there appeared an article by the editor in which he stated, quote, okay, this is the editor of the Catholic paper, Shepherd of the Valley. I don't know if it's still in print. He says, if Catholics ever attain, which they surely will, though at a distant day, the immense numerical majority in the United States, religious liberty, as at present understood, will be at an end, unquote. So this Catholic authority, in this Catholic paper, Shepherd of the Valley, said that if Catholics ever attain, which they surely will, though at a distant day, and right now we're almost at that distant day, the immense numerical majority in the United States, religious liberty as at present understood will be at an end. And let me make myself clear. And I have said this, I have alluded to this in the past, and I will say it again. The present border crisis in this country is not as much as some people have said to get votes for the Democratic Party as it is to get votes that agree with Catholic doctrine and Catholic rule. That's the reason for the border crisis. Not so much because of Catholic, or rather Democratic votes to get these people to vote Democratic, but so that, because most of those people coming across the border are Catholic, okay? And the papacy knows this. A Protestant lecturer who made use of this quotation was bitterly arraigned in a double-column front-page article in the Catholic Standard and Times for his false statements regarding Catholics. For, it pointed out, if he had finished the quotation with the words which followed, "So say our enemies," it would have reversed its meaning. Okay, so this Catholic paper was saying that this Protestant who was making use of their own statements, making use of the Catholic statements in the Shepherd of the Valley periodical or paper, they're saying that if that Protestant had said, had put the rest of the statement, "So say our enemies," in other words, the Catholics were saying, so the Protestants are making this claim. They're accusing us of working towards destroying religious liberty in this country. Okay, so let me read it again. A Protestant lecturer who made use of this quotation by the Catholics was bitterly arraigned in a double-column front-page article in the Catholic Standard and Times for his false statements regarding Catholics, for it, the Catholic Standard and Times, pointed out if he, the Protestant, had finished the quotation with the words which followed, quote, "So say our enemies," it would have reversed its meaning. In continuing, the incident would have passed off at the expense of the Protestant lecturer had not the Western Watchman of July 24th, 1913, continued the quotation still further. So the writer of this book, he's saying this incident would have passed off at the expense of the Protestant lecturer had not the Western Watchman, evidently a Protestant paper, of July 24th, 1913, continued the quotation still further. So he's saying, oh, you want to continue this quotation? Let's see what else it says. The whole quotation should read, if Catholics ever attain, which they surely will, though at a distant day, the immense numerical majority in the United States, religious liberty, as at present understood, will be at an end. So say our enemies, so say we. So the Catholic Church was saying, we're saying this, so say we, quoted in Protestant Magazine of October 1913. Why those who tried to deny their former statements should leave out the words, so say we, is very evident. For what can we think of those who publicly deny facts to screen their church from unfavorable public opinions, unless they act from the motive that the end justifies the means, and that heretics have no moral right to facts which they would misuse? We shall therefore continue to believe that the editors of our Sunday Visitor, Catholic magazine, in its issue of April 18, 1915, page 3, were perfectly honest and well informed on the subject, and that the later denials are of the same class as those mentioned above. Our Sunday Visitor, in the aforementioned quotation, makes use of vicarious fili dei and Vicar of Christ as synonymous terms, and Cardinal Manning does the same in his book, Temporal Power of the Pope. It cannot therefore be maintained, as some do, that Vicarius Christi is the only mode of spelling used in the title of the Pope, although the shorter rendering is used more often for brevity's sake. In fact, Vicarius Christi is composite in its origin, vicarious being Latin, while Christi is Latinized from the Greek. It would hardly seem probable that learned Romanists or educated Romanists would adopt such a composite title to the exclusion of the pure, dignified Latin title Vicarius Filii Dei, which has been in use among them for centuries. Of late, Catholic apologists have argued that the name of the beast in Revelation 13, 17, and 18 is a personal name of a single individual, such as Nero, and not the official title of a series of men, as that of the popes would be. But this would be entirely out of harmony with the context. For how could one man make war with God's people and overcome them in every country so that he would have power over all kindreds and tongues and nations? Revelation 13:7. Then, too, that power was to continue 42 months, verse 5, which those apologists claim to be literal. But how could one man accomplish such a world task in 42 literal months? These 42 months are 1,260 prophetic days, Revelation 11:2 and 3, and in prophecy a day stands for a year, Ezekiel 4:6. Even Catholics acknowledge that a day in prophecy stands for a year. See note under Daniel 9:24-27 in the Douay Bible. Father Reeves says the prophet's weeks are, by the interpreters of the Holy Scriptures, understood to include years for days. So this is in a book called The Bible History by this Father Reeves, so-called, on page 345. He admits that the prophets, meaning Daniel's and John's in Revelation, they are understood to include years for days. The 42 months, or 1,260 days of Revelation 13:5, are therefore 1,260 years during which this power was to continue. But would not that period be quite a long time for one man to live? This attempt made by Roman apologists to screen the papacy from being detected as the anti-Christian power of Revelation 13 appears too shallow to be seriously asserted by men who have made a thorough study of Bible prophecy. We will end the reading of this very important book, Facts of Faith, by Christian Edwardson. We'll end it for now, and we will continue the reading in our next presentation. If you agree with this presentation, then we would encourage you by all means to tap that like button so that this video can be sent far and wide to those who are hungering for the truth. And if you have any questions or comments, then I would invite you also to place them at the bottom of this video. And if you haven't subscribed, we would highly encourage you to do that also. Thank you for joining us here at Jewels of Truth. We hope that you will have a good day in the Lord.